There is a moment I have never spoken about out loud, not to my children, not to my wife, not to anyone. And I have carried it for 11 years now, like a stone in my coat pocket that I keep reaching for and then leaving alone. My name is Walter. I am 84 years old, and the thing I want to tell you today is about the last time I saw my closest friend alive and what I chose not to say to him. His name was Raymond. We had been friends since we were 19 years old. That is 65 years of friendship. 65 years of phone calls and arguments and silences that were comfortable because we had earned them. He was the kind of man who knew things about you that you had never said out loud, and he never used that knowledge against you. That is rarer than people understand. Most people in a long life, you are lucky to have one person like that. Raymond was mine. He was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in the spring of 2013. They gave him 4 months. He lasted 6, which felt like a victory at the time, though I am not sure anymore what we thought we were winning. I visited him 11 times during those 6 months. I counted afterward, the way you do when you are trying to understand something you cannot quite reach. 11 visits. And every single time I drove home, I sat in my car in the driveway before going inside, and I thought the same thought. I thought, next time. Next time I will say it. I want to tell you what I could not say to him, because I think it is important that you understand it was not a dramatic thing. It was not some buried secret or a wrong I had done him. It was simply the truth of what he had meant to me. That was all. I wanted to tell him that he had been the most steadying presence in my adult life, that when my first business failed and I was too ashamed to tell my wife how bad it truly was, Raymond sat with me in a diner for 4 hours and never once made me feel small, that when my son stopped speaking to me for 3 years in his 30s, Raymond called me every Sunday morning without ever being asked to, that I had spent 65 years being known by him, and that being known like that, truly known, without performance or pretense, was something I had never adequately appreciated until I was watching it leave the earth. I could not say any of that to him. Not because I did not love him, but because I did not know how to begin, because every time I sat beside his bed and looked at him, the words felt too large for the room. They felt like they would embarrass both of us. Raymond was not a sentimental man in the conventional sense, and neither am I, and somewhere in that shared understanding, we had built a culture between us of saying important things sideways, through jokes and complaints and long silences that we both understood. And I told myself that he knew. I told myself that a man who had been your friend for 65 years already understood everything you needed to say. He died on a Tuesday morning in October. His daughter called me. I remember I was in the kitchen and I was pouring coffee, and when I hung up the phone, I stood at the counter for a long time, and I did not cry. I felt something different from grief, something I did not have a name for yet. It took me several years to find the word for it. The word is incompleteness, not loss exactly, though that came too, but the specific weight of something that was supposed to happen and did not. A door that was open for 6 months and that I never walked through, and that is now simply gone. Not locked. Gone. I have thought about this for 11 years. I have thought about why it was so difficult to say a true thing to a dying man I had loved for most of my adult life. And what I have come to understand, slowly and not without some difficulty, is that the problem was never Raymond. The problem was a habit I had built across an entire lifetime, a habit of leaving the most important things unsaid with everyone I loved. Raymond was simply where that habit finally showed me its full cost. I think about my father. He died when I was 52. We had a decent relationship. Not a close one, but decent. He was a hard-working, quiet man who provided for his family and expected very little in return except order and effort. I respected him. I am not sure I ever told him that. I am not sure respect was a word we would have known how to use with each other. He died of a heart attack on a Thursday afternoon, quickly, without warning, which in one sense was a mercy, and in another sense meant that there was no final conversation, no gathered family at a bedside, no deliberate goodbye, just a Thursday, and then he was gone. And I realized at his funeral that I did not know whether he had been happy. I had known this man for 52 years, and I could not have told you with any certainty whether his life had felt meaningful to him. That is a strange thing to sit with at your father's graveside. I think about my wife, Margaret. We have been married for 58 years. She is a good woman, a patient woman, a woman of considerable interior strength that she has never needed to announce or perform. I have loved her in the way that long marriages produce love, which is less like a feeling and more like a fact of the landscape, something so constant you forget to remark on it. And I have not told her enough. I have assumed enough. I have let 65 years of demonstrated commitment stand in place of the spoken word, the same way I did with Raymond, and I know that it is not the same thing. Commitment is not the same as being told. Presence is not the same as being seen. I know this now with a clarity I wish I had come to at 35 instead of 84. My son Thomas, the one who did not speak to me for 3 years. We repaired that eventually. It was slow and imperfect, and we did not discuss it directly, which is perhaps its own small indictment. We simply resumed. Gradually, carefully, the way you might resume walking on an ankle you have injured, testing the weight before trusting it. And we have a good relationship now, a genuine one, better than what we had before the silence, which is perhaps the one merciful thing the silence produced. But I have never told him what those 3 years cost me. I have never told him that I replayed every failure of fatherhood I could identify during that time, every moment I had chosen distance or distraction over presence. I have never told him that his return to my life felt like something I did not deserve and received anyway. I think he would want to know that. I think most people want to know that they have mattered enough to cause real damage by their absence. What I understand now, at 84, is that silence is never neutral. I believed for most of my life that restraint was a form of dignity, that a man who did not burden others with his interior life was a man of substance and self-containment. My father believed this. His father almost certainly believed it. It was handed down without words, which is perhaps the most fitting irony of all. This idea that the less you said, the more you were worth, transmitted across generations entirely through example and silence. And I absorbed it completely. I built my adult life inside it. And what I know now is that it is not dignity. It is distance, dressed in dignified clothing. Raymond knew me better than almost anyone alive, and he went to his grave without hearing from my own mouth what that had meant to me. I have to live with that. I do live with it. It does not ruin my days, and I want to be honest with you about that, because I think there is something dishonest about the way regret is usually described, as though it is a constant open wound. It is not that. It is more like a scar that you touch sometimes and remember. But remembering is its own kind of weight, and at 84 I am aware that I am carrying weights I did not have to accumulate. If I could go back to any of those 11 visits, I would go back to the third one. Raymond was still relatively well that day. We sat on his back porch and watched his bird feeder for a long time without talking, the way we had always been able to do. And at some point he turned to me and said, in that dry, sideways way of his, "You know, I'm not afraid of dying. I'm just annoyed about the timing." And I laughed, because that was Raymond, and because laughing was easier. But what I should have said, what I was actually thinking in that moment, was, I know you're not afraid. You have never been afraid of anything that mattered. And I have spent my whole life wishing I was more like you in that way. I should have said that. It was true. He would have deflected it with a joke, and we both would have been embarrassed for about 30 seconds, and then we would have gone back to watching the birds, and it would have been said, it would have existed between us, and I would not have spent 11 years reaching into my coat pocket for a stone I cannot put down. I am not telling you this so that you will feel sorry for me. I am telling you this because you are almost certainly in the middle of your own version of it right now. There is someone in your life you have not said the true thing to, not because you do not feel it, but because the feeling is too large, or the habit of not saying it is too old, or because you have told yourself they already know. They might know, but knowing is not the same as being told. And you have more time than Raymond had, and more time than my father had on that Thursday afternoon, but not infinite time. Nobody has infinite time. That is the only thing every human life has reliably in common. Say the thing, not tomorrow, and not in the right moment, because the right moment is a story we tell ourselves to justify waiting. Say it in an ordinary moment, on a porch, watching birds, in the middle of a Tuesday that does not feel significant at all. Those are the moments that last. Those are the ones that 11 years later you are either grateful for or you are not. My name is Walter. I am 84 years old, and I would give a great deal to sit on that porch one more time.